very fortunate to have the leadership of Stan Carson. He is a force of nature in Arlington, as most of you know. And Arlington wouldn't be the livable place it is today without his guidance, without his tutelage, without his involvement. And he's been a role model for everyone to follow. This is what makes Arlington, Arlington, is this kind of turnout, civic associations. This is, you should be so proud, really. And it represents the dynamics of Arlington, Arlington Way, and it's this involvement that keeps moving the ball down the road and keeps us reaching for a better tomorrow, for better ways of doing things, for looking for best practices. And that's a lot of what the Arlington Planning Commission is tasked with, is to try and be the leadership that produces a forum and allows for the free flow of ideas and best practices to come from the people who are using the area that's being planned. And this is what makes it so unique. No one knows land use best than the people who are currently using the land, who understand the flow of pedestrian traffic, who understand how cars use or don't use. And this is what brings vibrancy. So many developers tell us that when they go to develop in Bethesda, somewhere in Montgomery County, the first thing they say, well, how are they doing it in Arlington? And it's true. We are cutting edge. We try and get out there. We were the first ones with green initiatives, first one with walkability. And this year, with any luck, we will introduce a new concept of visitability. It's in its infancy. It's still being talked about. We'd like to, just do some rollout and get people thinking about the townhouses and single-family homes that are being built up as they're teardowns and rebuilds, about thinking about smarter houses, how we use them through the lifespan. Kids with soccer injuries, football injuries, old football injuries, as well as the broken hips. And so that when we're building new homes, that we build them a little smarter than we did yesterday, and that the homes serve us better in our life, instead of us trying to get out around the built environment and trying to figure out how to adapt to the built environment. Let's get the built environment to adapt to us. And it keeps people in the community. So that is on my wish list going forward, that we may be able to do something, get developers and initiatives going, and get people thinking. There are no federal guidelines for visitability. There are other states that have best practices, but always has to be the caveat that we are a Dillon state. But what we can do is educate, show the advantages, show how graceful it is, and how what we're building, we can build it to better serve the users at any age, whether it's a toddler or whether it's a grandmother. But that housing should be inclusive, whether it's economics, age, or ability. We want housing that is really built to be inclusive. As a background, our Planning Commission is the only state chartered commission for 4 towns, cities. And in 1956, our Arlington County Board set up the bylaws for Planning Commission. And the Planning Commission, like I said at the beginning, is to provide the structure to recommend to the board best land use practices. But this is at the end, after you go through many, many parts of a plan. There are 3 subcommittees of the Planning Commission. There's the zoning, where we discuss ordinances, and is it development plans that come in, is it appropriate for the zoning? If not, why not? Do we need to change it? Do we need to keep it the same? What are the implications if we change it? We try not to do spot zoning, to change one thing and set bad precedents. This year, zoning is going to undergo a lot of hard work. Many parts of our zoning are out of date. We have pieces that got left off zoning maps and zoning laws and ordinances, amendments that aren't really understandable, or perhaps haven't really kept up with the times of how we're planning our livable areas today. And so what we're going to do is be looking at some chunks of the zoning ordinances and see what needs to happen to them to make them more understandable. Do we need to tweak them to make them more applicable to today's way of doing things? So this will be, you'll be reading about this all the time, and we're going to be starting in the next couple of weeks. So if you look on the Zoning Commission website, you'll see what we're up to. We have the Site Plan Review Commission. It's another commission of the Planning Commission, and that's where we're going to get the applicants. We're going to build it. We're going to get planning commissioners. We get civic associations. We get pedestrian advisory, transportation, environmental services. If there's concerns about fire and safety, we'll get police and fire input. We get urban forestry involved. Many times when it comes to signs and things, we're going to get the Park Service involved. So that's the site plan, where we bring all of these together and try and come to some consensus of, is this the right thing for this area? Is this what was planned? Is this what was envisioned under the sector plan? Does this fit the general land use plan? Is it acceptable to the community? What impact does it have on schools, on our concepts for affordable housing, of integrated neighborhoods in terms of mixed incomes, mix of pedestrian versus automobiles? And this is the forum that we sit and we talk about all of these things. And at the end, after however many meetings it takes for us to work through this process, it will then go to the Planning Commission as a whole, where there will be a hearing of the issues that have been resolved, the issues outstanding, any concerns. And it's at that time the Planning Commission will then review it and make recommendations to it, to the county board. The other part of the Planning Commission is long range. We're going to be doing, we had Crystal City, we have Roslyn, which you all know we're going to be doing Heights. We're probably not going to be taking out the Heights. It's probably going to be a more unified approach so that we're not piecemealing it. And then we're trying to make pedestrians fit with Heights and streets. We're going to try and do the next part of it in a holistic way so we can better visualize and understand how people are going to really be able to use the next part of Roslyn that we're going to be looking at. And so this is long range, and then there's long range. And then there's bigger studies. But it all comes down to the same thing. Long range is going to be looking at what's going to come down the road before it gets to site planned. Crystal City, and now we're doing Penn Place, is a big one. On Glebe Road, we're going to be doing Arlington Service Center, and then Harris Teeter between North Randolph and Carlin Springs. So that's long range. What will that look like? How was it zoned? What was the sector plan? What was the vision? And is that the same as what people are wanting to do today? What developers? We're, on one hand, really delighted that there's cranes going back. We used to think that was our, county bird. And then they all went away. And it does make you grateful to see birds flying again, because it means we're continuing to be relevant and vibrant. And it's been a hard time for everybody. But people still want to come to Arlington. People still want to live here. People feel that it's a great place to invest and to rebuild and to bring their offices. And that speaks well to the people who live here already, to the people who are involved, who have been stewards of the planning process for the decades before I got here, and the other people on the Planning Commission. There are 12 of us. There are 4-year terms. You can be appointed for another 4-year term, and then you go off. And we try, and sometimes if there's too many new people, we don't have enough of the historic memory around, sitting there in the dais, we may extend them for a little bit longer because we benefit so much from the people and what they bring to the table who've been there, done that, you know, bought that t-shirt already, and can keep us from repeating some mistakes that may have been done in the past, or going down rabbit holes that we don't need to investigate again. This year we have to work on the comprehensive plan. It's every 5 years, and it's one thing that the state mandates that the Planning Commission does. We work on that with the county board and the all other organizations and the county manager. You can correct them. I know you've been through several comprehensive plans in your life. But this is really what sets out the vision for the next 5 years. Last one was a lot with pedestrian element, the master transportation plan, and we are still finishing that up. If you watch, we're in attendance at the last county board meeting. We were doing some finishing touches, some very important ones on street topography, bicycle, curbs, gutters, and these will always be ongoing. It's like those of us, it's a living document that we really need to continue to nurture and tend to, because how we use our environment evolves as society evolves. And what we want, when you look back after World War II, and everybody came back and wanted cars, and it was really built for automobiles. And now we've rethought that, and this pendulum has swung again. And we're saying, well, yeah, that was nice, but we really lost something that we want to recapture. We want not to have to drive to get a loaf of bread and a newspaper and to go get a cup of coffee. So now the pendulum is swinging back, and we're taking back many of our streets, and we're trying to build them so that they will reflect the speed we want people to drive safely on, and respect pedestrians and bicycles, and not bring it back from where it was all automobile when it was the latest, greatest thing. And I think Arlington has proven they want more of a community, and that is less car, more pedestrians, more interaction on the street, and more vibrancy. When we do our site plans and we want first floor retail, it's always about street activation. It's how will we keep that street activated? What is the draw? How do we make it so that we bring people in, and people will want to walk there and visit with their friends? Sometimes it's organic, you know. Seems like Clarendon has a lightning in the bottle, you know. Everybody wants a little Clarendon who like that, you know, that energy level. People worked really, really hard to get Clarendon that way, and it didn't come just one day because a developer had a vision. It came from the people, and it took years for people to say, we want a village, we want this amount of density, we want this many stories high, we want it to look like this, and they kept at it, and they kept at it, and they kept at it, and they transformed Clarendon. And it's really amazing to see. I don't live in Clarendon, but I've watched from my perch in Ballston, and we still are growing up in Ballston. We're taking another bite of the apple, maybe not quite like Roslyn, but Ballston still has a lot of growth. And we're always now looking at best practices, Columbia Pike, Clarendon, places that have the energy. I don't know if we can bring back Dr. Dremo, but you know, we still have, you know, great concepts like Java Shack, you know, that we want to hold on to and make them continue to be part of the fabric of what makes Arlington Arlington. So it's not all shiny and new. And and that we continue to keep this character. But that push to keep the character comes from the citizens that show up at the meetings and say, this is what we value. This is what's important to us. We want to move forward, but we want the ambiance. We want the small entrepreneur. We want the mom and pops. This is our value system. And you can see that. May be interesting going forward. We understand some big box stores are now getting an urban model, but so far they haven't come knocking on our door. We don't live in a food desert. We don't have some of the challenges that other urban areas do that really feel that they would be a boost for them. We're very fortunate that way, that we have fresh fruits and vegetables. Very, very convenient to us. But that didn't happen by itself. You don't have farmers markets because the farmers decided to set up a stand one day. People said, we want farmers markets. And they made it happen. The civic associations made it happen. Once again, it's the quality of life that the citizens demand and have a vision for, come to the meetings and share and help us work to that end point. This is what has brought us to this point, and I know in some places like Roslyn, I think its best days are ahead of us. I think it's going to be really, really wonderful when this new cycle of building is done and we bring more people there, and it's not just offices. And that's our challenge, is to make it a livable area and not something you pass through and go to work and leave. And it deserves to be the beacon, as on the river.